Hi everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am taking on the design of this dynamic training calendar in Microsoft Excel. And as usual, I get started by setting out the layout for the dashboard. This dashboard has three components or three sections. There's a left sidebar, there's a right sidebar, and then there's the middle component that has the calendar section. So the first things first, very quickly, I designate the three different sections by just changing the cell colors in Microsoft Excel. Simple operation to just visually differentiate the three different sections, and also playing around with separation of the right sidebar, but I'm still going to adjust that later. Now I start working on the calendar panel, and this calendar panel, I'm not going to do a lot of talking over it because I am actually referencing beyond the main layouts where just setting up what I'm doing right now, setting up the calendar structure, the logic behind the calendar, and how the calendar is set up such that the numbers you see there are formatted as Excel dates, and that way we can work with them as Excel dates, and they are connected to the month and the year, and you can even go up there where I've written 2025 and change it to a different year, and the calendar works still the same way. So that logic of setting up a dynamic model, I have that on my blog, 101 Excel Hacks, the WordPress.com, and I'm going to link the particular article I'm making reference to, the particular hack 86. I'm going to link that in the description. So I'm not going to talk a lot because I have gone into detail on that in that blog post. So what you're going to see me here is just referencing that article, because yes, I reference the hacks that I have written so that I make my work faster. You see me referencing that article and then setting up the calendar. So I've started work on the right panel. I didn't get some of that on camera, but essentially what I've done is set up it's over there. It's just merge text in different sizes and maybe different font colors just for emphasis. And I use two variants of fonts. I think Aptos Menu for the course ID to give it that effect. And then I think for the rest of the text is regular Aptos, the standard font for Microsoft Office these days. And now I move to the left side panel. Again, this effort is largely cell format operation, and I have brought in training mandates, essentially the main data, which is a training catalog of all the training scheduled for a hypothetical organization in the year 2025. That calendar has training categories, and these are the training categories which, well, in some organizations we refer to them as training mandates, but they're the themes across which the trainings for the years are planned. So this is going to be it's going to guide the color coding that you're going to see in this training calendar um, along the line. So I'm setting that right side panel up as a guide. It's essentially going to be a legend for the different colors that would show up on the training calendar. And it's a guide so that when you look at the calendar, you know that, okay, the training for this date is sustainability themed, or it's based on AI and digital transformation. That's essentially what that left side panel setup is all about. Now the fun part starts, as I like to call it. This is where we start to build dynamism into this model. And first thing is to set up the conditional format that highlights the calendar, the dates in the calendar where trainings have been slated for. And this is a conditional formatting operation. It's running from the data in the back end, and it is a search for every training date, and the equivalent date on the calendar is highlighted using yellow fill color for now, just to get things started. In addition to the conditional formatting rule I've already set up, I'm going to set up 4 more conditional formatting rules, one for each of the training themes. And this conditional formatting rule is an enhancement on the first one. The first one is an match operation, matching the data in the calendar to the data in the training catalog table. And in addition to that match operation, there's going to be a VLOOKUP operation to check the original training catalog table for the dates that have been highlighted, the training dates where the category for that training has been identified as one of the training themes. So I'm setting up 4 conditional formatting rules, one for each training theme. And as for each training theme, the conditional formatting is changed to the color that corresponds with that color that has been set up in the left side panel. Now I'm setting up a filter panel for the departments where if the training catalog was more extensive than the, I think, 52 or so rows in the data set, it will enable the user of this training catalog filter the training dates based on the departments. But there are not a lot of trainings for the year in the training catalog, so I actually didn't activate it even though I set it up. So you'll notice that this part of the video goes fast. I basically sped it up because, I mean, the setup is there, and so just for consistency and cohesiveness in this tutorial, I left this part in, but I end up not using the setup at all. I mean, and it's available there for any user of the templates that wants to activate it, but I actually do not activate it at all in this tutorial. Something else I do is adjust the calendar layout from a 2-column structure with 6 months each to a 3-column structure with 4 months each. Once I'm done with that, I spend some time tidying up the conditional formatting rules. And now I'm going to set up the macro that's going to make this training catalog dynamic. It's essentially a worksheet selection change event that enables the kind of action in Excel where you can click on a cell and you have a very interactive event happen. In this case, we want to be able to click on a calendar date and then have the right side panel updates with the details of the training in that date. So it's I've gone to the developer tab, I've opened Visual Basic Editor. In the worksheets, as against an insert module, inside the worksheet, which is titled How, setting up the worksheet selection change macro. I used it in a previous project, so I essentially just copied and pasted it in there. That's why you see some odd details. So I've copied and pasted, and I'm just going to update this code so that it works for this project. And this code is a very simple code. All it's going to do on the event of identifying a click in a cell that is within our target, it's just going to perform just one action, which is to update the cell that has been clicked, the date in the cell that has been clicked with a cell that has been, another cell in that same worksheet that has been designated selected date sheet. I've updated the by val, the target range, to match the months, the dates, the cells that correspond to the months January, February, and March for a start, to test it out. And I'm testing it out, and you can see on cell BA1, which is cell date sheet, I'm testing it out by clicking on the date, and you can see that that cell date sheet is changing to correspond with the date clicked. So it's working. And now I have started working on the main computation logic for the training panel, which is powered by VLOOKUP. I've set up a computation panel on my data sheet. I typically don't set it up that way, but just in the interest of time, and in the final template version, I've tidied it up and I've set it up on a different sheet. But I've designated that section with a gray fill so that it can be differentiated from the rest of the content on the data sheet. And what's happening in there is I'm setting up VLOOKUP. I think a total of 8 VLOOKUPs formula, one for each of the details on the training panel. So the first VLOOKUP, I had to move the date information to the leftmost column of the table so that I can run the VLOOKUP seamlessly and I don't have to use index match or XLOOKUP. So the date lookup is the date column is the first column in the table, and using that first column, I use a VLOOKUP to bring out the corresponding course ID, training name, training targets, training delivery, training duration for the corresponding dates, and that's the VLOOKUP function I'm setting up. I also wrap the VLOOKUP formulas with an if error, so that if a date that is not a training date is clicked, it doesn't just return a bunch of errors, but it returns a blank, provides a blank return. Once I've confirmed the VLOOKUP formulas are all working correctly, I then start to connect them to the front end by referencing them in the training panel, that black training panel, one after the other. So I replace the information in that training panel with the return from the VLOOKUP, and then I test it out to confirm that it's working. And now we're moving on to the next step, which is setting up the training list. And in this step, first designate, and now we're then going to set up the training list. And this training list is not a typical list, it's dynamic. It is going to be set up on the right sidebar, and it updates every time a new date is selected on the calendar to reflect the training participants that have been allocated for that training. So in the backend data, there are two tables. There's the training catalog table, and then there's the list of employees with their email addresses and their functions. So the assumption is that if in the training catalog a particular training is slated for all the supply chain employees or finance employees, that all the employees in supply chain and finance would be enrolled in that training. So based on that assumption, we are going to link up the data in a manner that every time a date where, for instance, a supply chain and finance training is set up, is scheduled, the training participant list will show the list of all the supply chain and finance employees with their email addresses, so that the additional action that was shown in those buttons, which is send a training invite or send a training reminder, can be done right in the same training catalog. So to transform the training attendee table to a dynamic list that will show up on the training calendar, and making use of, first of all, the filter function in Excel, which is one of the more recent functions. And I use that filter function to call on reference what comes up in the VLOOKUP, which is in cell M8 on the current training attendee list. First of all, I do a text split because the training audience can sometimes, based on the training catalog, can cut across two functions. Like for the example, we're looking at supply chain and compliance. So I do a text split operation, which is another one of the more recent functions in Excel, and it splits the text into two different cells for ease of the search function or the filter operation I want to do. So a text split splits up the current training audience into two separate cells, and then a filter operation then filters the entire table and asks it to check for when the function is the current function, and that's what we're looking at. So I struggled a bit with the filter function, and in the final version I ended up using a regular array function to separate the text so that the filter can work properly, because as you can see in this example, the filter is only bringing back the results for the first function, and it doesn't bring back the result for the second function, which is product development.
Something else I do while I'm here is just normalize the email lists. So looking at it, I generated this employee list from a from a dummy data site, and then it came with different types of email addresses, and I felt for cohesiveness it should have a regular streamlined email address system, and then that was the operation I did at the bottom over there, just using a combination of the left function, the mid function, and concatenate function to streamline all the employee emails. And once I'm done with the filter, I then start to bring the data on the filtered employee list to the front end. In that area I designated in the right side panel, and it's a basic reference operation, but I'm wrapping the reference with handlers just to manage the aesthetics. So in the event the user inadvertently clicks on one of the dates that doesn't have a training, I don't want it to just be showing 0 or error. So I wrap the reference with an if the number, the reference, if what is in that cell is nothing, then bring back nothing, so that it doesn't bring back 0 and make the 2 look odd. And later on I also wrap with an if error, just in the event of the function at the back end generating an error. And the other things I do, I just do a bit more tidying up of the tool. I remove the excess space at the end so that the tool can fit into one view to minimize scrolling. And then the final thing I do in this walkthrough is to set up the training panel, which is at the top right corner of the screen that is currently black, to set it up such that the color dynamically changes anytime any one of the trainings based on the annual training themes is selected. And that's a conditional formatting setup. That is a simple conditional formatting setup, and it's set up 4 times, 1 time for each of the training themes. And what this function is essentially doing is that it's checking for any time the training that has been selected, the name of the training corresponds with at the back end. That is, the selection at the back end corresponds with one of the training that was making reference to the actual training mandates that is in the sheet over there. And then I go to the back end to complete the code, because I set it up to just read January to test for the months, the dates in January to March, and now I'm extending it so that it covers the entire calendar.
Here's the final video just to demonstrate the last feature I built out in this training calendar, which is the ability to send out an email to participants just from a click of a button in the training catalog, in the training calendar. So I select the training and the participant list comes out, and then I click the send an invite button, and within a few 100 seconds it generates the training emails to all the emails indicated in this training participants list. It generates the training emails, and it puts the subject training invitation, it puts the name as indicated in the training list, and then it puts a screenshot of the training details. And this is set up in Microsoft Excel, and I just want to spend a couple of just talking through how that was set up. So this is running on an Excel macro, a VBA macro, and then I'm just going to show what that macro looks like. So I'm in the developer tab, and then this macro is titled email training, and here's how it's set up. So it's essentially a VBA macro that generates, first of all, does a count of the number of participants in the training list in this section, and then it makes a copy. It copies the training details as a range. It copies the range that corresponds to the training details. It pastes it as a picture, and then it loops through that email list and it sends out the emails. So this is the VBA code that's been set up. And when you have a VBA code that is triggering an Excel Outlook email action, you have to be sure that it references this object library that corresponds to your most updated, your most the version of Microsoft Office that's running your system. You have to make sure that it is ticked. So sometimes if you're trying to run an email, send an email macro and it's not running, you probably have to check the references and be sure that Microsoft Office is 16.0 for my own system, but it's different for yours. You have to confirm that this is ticked, and that is one of the things that might prevent it from running properly. So that's the last feature that was built out in this training calendar, in this automated training calendar. Thanks for watching this video. Remember to like, subscribe, and see you in one of the subsequent videos. Take care.